What is up, YouTube? We are back this week and we're talking about the brain. So we're going to start off with the cerebral cortex, which is right here, and it's the outer layer of the brain, and it controls complex mental functions such as thinking and planning. It splits into the left and right hemisphere, which is then divided into 4 lobes.
This large green stalk is the brainstem. It is the oldest part and central core of the brain, which begins where the spinal cord swells as it enters the skull. It's responsible for automatic and survival functions.
This small red piece on the brainstem is the medulla. It begins where the spinal cord enters the skull and controls heartbeat and breathing.
This purple net-like structure overlapping the medulla is the reticular formation, which controls the sleep-wake system that has a network of neurons inside the brainstem between the ears.
The red portion overlapping the reticular formation and the medulla is called the pons. It is an important factor in respiration rate and breathing, as well as sleeping and dreaming.
The cerebellum, which is represented by a big purple piece that wraps around the brainstem, coordinates voluntary movement, and damage to the cerebellum impairs the performance of those movements. The small blue oval that is embedded in the brainstem is the thalamus that receives most of sensory information, organizes it, and sends it to the cortex.
The basal ganglia, which is here represented by the black piece on top of the cerebral cortex, works with the cerebellum as well as the cerebral cortex to control voluntary movements.
The small purple dot above the pons is the hypothalamus. It controls motivated behaviors like eating, drinking, and sexual activity. It sets appetite drives and emotional states along with determining biological rhythms.
The pituitary gland, which is a small red dot parallel to the hypothalamus, controls growth and regulates other glands.
This long purple rope on top of the brainstem is the hippocampus. It is involved in learning and the shortage of long-term memories.
The amygdala, which is a small red ball that extends from the hippocampus, and there's 2 on each side of the brain. It influences aggression and fear as well as coordinating fight or flight responses.
The slightly curved red piece on the top of the brainstem is the corpus callosum. It is a large band of neural fibers that connects the 2 brain hemispheres and carries messages between them.
The frontal lobe, which is the big pink piece at the top, plays roles in personality, intelligence, and the voluntary control of muscle.
The parietal lobe, which is represented by the yellow piece, processes sensory information that has to do with taste, temperature, and touch. It is also involved in relating to physical space, attention, and motor control.
Cortex, which is represented by the light blue band, controls voluntary movements and is located at the rear of the frontal lobe.
The somatosensory cortex, that is represented by the dark blue band, detects and interprets the information on things like touch, temperature, pain, and pressure. It is located directly behind the motor context.
The occipital lobe, which is represented by this orange piece, processes and responds to visual stimuli like color, shape, and motion.
The temporal lobe, which is the white piece at the bottom of the brain, is important in hearing, language, processing, and memory. Damage to this lobe results in problems with filing experiences into the long-term memory.
Broca's area, which is represented by the purple ball, is involved in speech production, and damage to this area may result in telegraphic speech.
Vernix area, which is represented by the orange piece, is involved in understanding spoken language, and damage to this area prohibits people from understanding words.
We want to thank you for tuning in to another week's video. I hope you learned a lot about the brain, and make sure to like and subscribe. See you next week.